I was reminded a couple of days back, Thursday I believe it was, a year ago, now it'd be a year and 3 days ago, Frida's dad, Brother Fred Cope, passed away. It's hard to believe that's been a year. When he died, there was a box now that's been at my house for a while. In that box are a bunch of sermons that Brother Fred preached in the congregation in Ellick, Oklahoma. I've tried for a while to get some sermon ideas out of that box. And I have to admit, his handwriting is very unique. It's very small. And these days, I need very large printing to read. I found my solution was a copier at work. I put it on a darkened shade and I enlarged it to an 11 by 17 sheet. That's how bad my eyesight has got. And I was able to take some of Fred's ideas, and I would like to share them with you this morning. It's a great title that he had for his lesson. It's What is Rightfully Expected of Me? I'm going to be saying the words, but please ask yourself that question as we go through some of these verses that he's arranged for us to think about what's expected of me. So guys, we'll start with us first. What's expected of us as the head of the family? What's expected of us? What kind of a father should we be? But moms, I want you to ask yourself that question. Husbands, wives, ask yourself that question. You're a son, you're a daughter of someone. What's expected of us? Let me share some of those verses that my father-in-law chose in this lesson this morning. Starts off, he wants to know about us providing support. What kind of a support will we provide? And he's opening with 2 Corinthians, and this is going to be chapter 12, starting in verse 14. Paul's writing, it says, "Now I'm ready to visit you for the third time, and I will not be a burden to you, because what I want is not your possessions, but you." You hearing that? He's saying, I don't want what you have. He said, I want you. After all, children should not have to save up for their parents, but parents for their children. I want to read this to you again from the New Living Translation. I'm adding this to what Fred left me. New Living Translation puts it this way: after all, children don't provide for their parents, rather, parents provide for their children. Provide support, dads. Provide support, moms. Take care of those that you know. 1 Timothy 5, verse 8 puts it like this. 1 Timothy 5, verse 8. If anyone does not take care of his own relatives, especially his immediate family, there's two bad things. Listen to what he says. He has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Folks, we need to take care of family. Then he wrote this down and he titled it Fair Play. Listen to what he said about fair play. He used Matthew chapter 7, two verses, verse 11, verse 12. Matthew 7. If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give what is good to those who ask him? In everything, therefore, treat people the same way. You want them to treat you, for this is the law and the prophets. He's telling us about fair play. Treat people fairly. Be fair to people that you come in contact with every day. Also, for consideration, he had Hebrews chapter 10, one verse there. Hebrews 10, verse 24. I'm going to give it to us in 3 different translations. Don't miss the point of this. I don't think you will after the first one, but I'd like you to just listen to these other 2 as well. Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Did you ever ride a horse? How many in here have ever ridden a horse? How many in here have ever ridden a horse with spurs on? Yeah. Let me tell you what happens if you ride a horse with spurs on. You bump a horse in the ribs or in the flank, hang on. Hang on. He's telling us here, listen to the word that he just used. Let us consider how we may spur one another on to love and good deeds. Does that sound like he's saying just a little tap? Now listen to what he said in the New Living Translation. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good work. Let us think of ways. What are you thinking about right now? Really? What's in your head right now? Are you thinking about, how could I show or spur this crowd right here, some in this crowd, some in my own crowd, onto greater works of love and just greater works? Here's the English Standard Version. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. I'm thinking now, I'm pondering these things. I'm considering these verses that Fred left for us. Next on his list was he wanted to talk to us about love, and so he used this verse from Ephesians 5, verse 33. Nevertheless, each one of you must love his own wife even as himself. I'll stop here and say, Frida, I love you. I love you as much or more than I do my own self. And I think every man here can say that about his wife. And let the wife see that she respects her husband. So what Fred started with here so far is he wanted to suggest that we support, that we are concerned about fair play, and that we are concerned about love. This is something I'll interject. Fred didn't write this, so this is from me. Help your wife advises one home economics specialist. Here's what he advises. When she washes the dishes, wash the dishes with her. When she mops the floor, mop the floor with her. Well, maybe that's not exactly what he meant to say. That didn't sound very friendly, did it? How about the world? We talked about family. What does the world expect? What do they have a right to expect from me? He's found some verses about that too. He starts off considering the theme of honesty. Did you ever cheat somebody? Did you ever take from somebody? Did you ever lie to somebody? Steal something from somebody? Romans 12, verse 17 is the verse. What it says there in Romans 12, 17. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see that you're honorable. Hey, what if something was about to happen and I needed to empty my pockets? Whoa, and I am shocked today in my money clip there was a $100 bill, but I got to hand it to somebody. I probably look through the crowd and see, who can I trust the most? Who can I give my stuff to here? It should be that we'd think of that for everybody that's here. Everyone here is honest and honorable. 2 Corinthians 8, verse 20, 21. 2 Corinthians 8. We're traveling together to guard against any criticism for the way that we're handling this generous gift. Paul's writing there, and what he's talking about is a collection. There's money. We were talking about money just a minute ago, my money. Now we're talking about the church's money, and Paul's sending Titus with the money. Listen what he concludes The next verse he says this, "For we are taking pains to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also in the eyes of man." Be honorable, be honest, be somebody that's trustworthy, even in this case with money. To be honest, the real reason it's so hard to bring children up right these days is because they insist on imitating their parents. Did you ever say anything around the kids when they were real little, and like a little parrot, pretty soon you heard them say it? Had to be so careful. Had to be on guard all the time about when we're that example before folks, especially our own family. So the next thing that Fred had for us was he wanted to talk about good examples. And he picked from the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, and the verses are 14, 15, and 16, Matthew 5. You know this one real well. You may not recognize the translation that I use, but you know this writing. "You're the light of the world. A city located on a hill cannot be hidden. People do not light a lamp, put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, that it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people, so they can see your good deeds and give honor to your Father in heaven." Good examples. Hopefully our lives are filled with good deeds. Every day somebody could look into the example of our life and say, "Wow, there's somebody I could follow. Wow, look at that example. That's what I want to do, what they're doing." That I do good to all the world. Galatians 6, 2 verses there, verses 9 and 10, Galatians 6. And he tells us to bear one another's burdens. Listen, let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. We'll reap if we do not grow weary. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who are in the household of faith. Do good to everybody, but especially do good to those that you serve the Lord with. Proverbs 3:27, "Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it's in your power to act." Whoa. Kind of takes away from us right here with that verse. I can ride the bench and let the others be in the game. Not with that last part that he used after that comma. When it's in your power to act. When you could do it. John 9 verse 4, "As long as it is a day, we must do the works of him who sent me." As long as it's day. Night's coming when nobody can work. So now he's gave us some more things to ponder. He's talked about honesty. Fred talked about being a good example. And he said, do good to all the world. Keep it coming, Fred. He's got a little bit more for us. He wants us to put God and the church first. There he used Revelation 2 and verse 11. Let the person who has ears listen to what the Spirit says to the churches. Everyone who wins the victory will never be hurt by the second death. What an excellent promise this is right here. Love him, he's our creator. Luke 10 verse 27. I really like this translation. It says, the expert answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all of your soul, with all your strength, with all of your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Love, 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 love. Did you get that? He wants us to think about worshiping him. And he gave us John 4, verse 23 and verse 24 to think about when we're thinking about worshiping God. Indeed, the time is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. The Father is looking for people like that, to worship him. Verse 24, God is spirit, and the people who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. So now he's gave us three more examples. Love God and the church first. Love him because he made us. And he reminds us to consider always to worship him. What does the church have a right to expect of me? Of little old me? What can you be counted on to do for the church? Some of the things are really quite simple. Matthew 6:33, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. 1 Timothy 4, verse 8, for physical training is of some value. Obviously, I am not working too hard at that. But physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding promise for both the present life and the life to come. Do you hear in these verses that there's promise after promise? There's a promise in not only this life, but also in the life to come. Hebrews 10, verse 22 through 26. Hebrews 10. Let us approach, therefore, with a true heart and the confidence of faith, while our hearts are sprinkled and purified from a wicked conscience, and having bathed their bodies in pure water, let us grasp firmly the confession of our hope and not waver, for he who has promised is faithful. And let us pay attention to one another. If you'll allow me, I'll go back on that verse and repeat it to you, what he just said. And let us pay attention to one another in encouragement of love and of good works. We should not be forsaking our meetings, as is the custom of some, but plead with one another all the more as you see the day drawing near. Other thoughts about the church. It's expected that I support it. 1 Corinthians 16, verses 1, verse 2. Now, regarding your question about the money being collected for God's people in Jerusalem, you should follow the same procedure I gave to the churches in Galatia. On the first day of the week, you should each put aside a portion of the money you have earned. Underline that word, each. Don't wait until I get there and then try to collect it all at once. God has given us ears to listen. God, first expectation for Christians is that we listen to his word. God's word says that, so faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. He gave us ears to hear. He gave us eyes that we should see with. We're expected to use our eyes to see the examples that are in the Bible. See the examples of Jesus. See the examples of the ones who came after, the martyrs that he went around and picked to carry on his work. 1 Peter 2, verse 21, we're to follow his steps. He's given you a head with which to think. I don't know if you're thinking this morning. I don't even know if you're connected or if you're following along. But he's gave you a brain. God's given us a heart with which to feel. Appreciated the prayers this morning. I was feeling what you were talking about and the people that you spoke about, many that we know, but even some that we don't know. But you mentioned them in the prayer. We should have compassion on people, not just those that we know. God's given us feet to go places. In Matthew 28, the Great Commission, he told them to go. They didn't go in their cars, but they used their feet. God's given us a mouth with which to speak. Do you have the information? Do you have a little message, a kernel of knowledge about God? about Jesus Christ, the Son of God, He's gave us a mouth with which to speak. God's given us hands that we can do work. Did you ever consider the book of Nehemiah and what they were doing there with their hand? You know, we're supposed to provide for our families. We're supposed to provide for the needy. That's with one hand. What's the other hand for? The other hand is for the sword of the Spirit. We're supposed to be using that other hand to help fight the good fight. We're in the wrap-up part of this. Wanted to tell you a story about some people working a crossword puzzle. Man was stopped and he was stumped, and he asked everybody around him, what's a four-letter word for a strong emotional reaction toward a difficult person? And the first person nearby said, the answer to that is hate. Hate. And a lady interrupted and she said, no, the answer is love. You know, everybody's working that crossword puzzle. But the way you answer is up to you. The last verse will give the Apostle Paul the final word here. Fred selected this, and it was 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 58. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain.